morning and welcome to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Shane Matthews, John Cornell on a Friday, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is.
It's like Groundhog Day, JC.
What? Well,
just the same thing again today.
I knew you saw that. Well, you know I guess we're really learning a lot about ourselves in times.
I ain't learned nothing about myself.
You have so. You've learned that you can clean, that you're very efficient around the house and getting rid of the old and bringing in, well, basically nothing but getting rid of the old. And you're good at doing a podcast from the house. You're very good at that, QB. Did you ever think you'd be as good doing a podcast from the house as you've become?
No, I actually kind of like it. It's very convenient. But yeah, I have learned that I didn't realize how much my life revolved around sports.
Well, QB, I mean, it is just the way we've lived our lives. I mean, this is something that you and I have grown up with. It's hard to adjust, right? I mean, you're almost 50 years old. I mean, think about that. That's a long time. So, yeah. I mean, so this is what you're used to in the next 50 years. Who knows what you'll be good at? But I think I think we are just really getting to a point where, look, there's no light at the end of the tunnel here either. I mean, the unknown is what keeps us kind of grounded. And I tell you what, my man, this is the new normal for a while until, we get some news flow that could change things in our lives when it revolves around sports, of course. And, we run our lives around sports at night so let me ask you this. What did you watch on TV last night, QB? That should be the first thing we start to show off with every day.
What did I watch on TV last night?
Yeah, you.
I didn't even turn my TV on the entire day or night.
Wow. See, that is shocking. That is a shocking development right there. What was the house like without the TV on? So,
it was fine.
Yeah. Okay. So now you're finding out that you don't need the television in your life, QB.
I never said I did.
I know, but it's a change. How many times before now have you gone without the television on in your house? How many?
I mean, I'm sure there are times when I haven't turned it on, but usually I turn it on and click it on some sports channel, and whether I'm watching a game or not, I can hear it in the background.
Yeah, white noise. That's what they call that. Well, right now, QB, there are some things going on. Of course, the National Football League is holding its draft April 23rd, 24th, and 25th. A lot of the teams are complaining about that. Some teams obviously are better at the draft than other teams, I guess, as we've seen throughout the years. But that's just the way it works in a competitive landscape. Some are better than others, right? So that draft is going to happen, according to Roger Goodell. And, one of the news that I wanted to pass along to you was I did get word from Ed Werder, who was reporting that the Cowboys and Dak Prescott have agreed on an unprecedented contract, which will make him the highest paid player in NFL history, if you can believe that.
Congratulations to him. And
yeah.
But it just blows my mind.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but it will, if it does, make him the highest paid, which we're talking about over $35 to $36 billion plus.
Well, that'll only be for a year, because then Patrick Mahomes is going to blast that away.
I would think, but here's the Cowboy. Oh no,
Patrick Mahomes is worth, if he's worth $35 million a year, Patrick Mahomes is worth $100 million a year.
Well, so we've got the Cowboys who've enjoyed a $2.4 million rookie deal for the first 4 years with Dak Prescott. But with that, what have they got to show for it? They've got one playoff win. That was a wild card game that I actually attended. It was against the Seattle Seahawks. And then they went to play the Rams and lost in the divisional round. But right now, you're combining three players potentially at over $70 million in Dak, Zeke, and Amari per year. What's that going to leave under the cap for the Cowboys? And we saw what a couple of players can do when they eat up the salary cap with Jared Goff and Todd Gurley, for example, at the Rams. They weren't very good last year. They couldn't stop anybody. And You take away from so much when you give a boatload to just a few. And I think what we're seeing here is the Cowboys making the same mistake. Now, there are teams that under the rookie deal with their quarterback have won a Super Bowl. Seattle won one under Russell Wilson with his rookie deal. Of course, we saw the Chiefs do it last year with Mahomes under his rookie deal. The Eagles got to the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz's rookie deal, with Foles winning it because Wentz got hurt, but Wentz did a lot of the work during the regular season to get the Eagles in position. Everybody except the Cowboys. The Rams got to the Super Bowl under Jared Goff's rookie deal, but they lost, but they did get there. And the Cowboys have one playoff win. So they've enjoyed Dak Prescott playing under his rookie deal, but now they're going to pay him everything in town, and I'm just not sure what they get in return for that, because they were an 8-18 last year. So I think they're basically giving him $9 to $10 million more than what anybody on the free market would give, and I'm not sure why Jerry's doing that.
Yeah, I don't either. This is John Cornell, Shane Matthews on Pot Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. And today, don't forget, on the Titan MR hotline, we're going to have Chris Doering join the show here about 8:15, 8:20, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
so if you got any text messages, shoot them to us at 353-7465. You can also send some Facebook Live questions or comments on the Pound Hurt Facebook Live, your preferred personal injury attorney. So JC, you asked me what I watched last night. What did you watch?
Yeah. I watched briefly while I could stay awake, Attack of the Clones. That would be your second in the series of 6 Star Wars movies.
That sounds terrible.
Well, there were some parts of the show that I really enjoyed. I really did. When Jango Fett got his head chopped off by Mace Windu in that scene, that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I guess. Did you have on like outfit like a?
But Samuel Jackson played Mace Windu. He played Mace Windu, and he chopped off Jango Fett's head. So that was a great scene. Great scene. Listen, you're not a sci-fi Star Wars guy, but I think, but when you get our guest on, he and I could talk about Star Wars the entire show.
Well, maybe y'all should start doing a podcast on Star Wars.
Well, no, but I think if you asked him, so what I'll tell him is that I'll watch that show and he'll be excited about it.
Okay, well, y'all, that just blows my mind.
It might blow our mind that you don't like Star Wars, QB.
Yeah, that's true. I might be the only human being that doesn't. I don't even know if I may have seen half of one, the first one ever, and that was about it. That was enough for me.
Well, and as we all know, that was actually the 4th in a series of 6 movies that were made over the last 4 decades. Let me get back to NFL for a moment. Bruce Arians saying that Antonio Brown would not be a good fit at Tampa Bay. The Bucs basically 1 or 2 games away from making the playoffs last year. He does not want AB. AB's crazy, right? I mean, why would you want somebody like that to come in and possibly disrupt the locker room?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how many years Arians and Antonio Brown were together in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. So he knows the guy. Obviously, Tom Brady had 1 game with him last year. It was when the Patriots played the Dolphins, I think, at the beginning of the year. I don't know. I mean, for some reason, Tom Brady likes the guy. I guess he can get open. That's why you like him. But as far as being a head coach and seeing what he can do to a locker room, I think that's what Bruce Arians is saying. And obviously, he's known AB for quite some time. Brown's crazy. He's a crazy guy. Where's Cam Newton going to be? Probably as a backup somewhere, because right now the Chargers are coming up a lot. But Tyrod Taylor is their guy, according to their coach, Anthony Lynn. What I find interesting is what's happening in Washington, QB, at the Redskins right now, because here we have Dwayne Haskins, who was their top draft pick, but then they go ahead, hire Ron Rivera, and they bring in Kyle Allen, who started 12 games in Carolina last season, and he likes Kyle Allen a lot.
I like Kyle Allen too.
Yeah, so you got Kyle Allen coming in, and what now with Dwayne Haskins and that, what they did with Dwayne Haskins making him their top pick? What will happen? Will they trade Dwayne Haskins? Will they find some room to have both quarterbacks. Not really sure, but the Redskins are looking at Kyle Allen very hard, and they traded for him, so he's on the roster. And I think with baseball, as we go forward here, spring training, they're talking about maybe sometime in May doing an abbreviated 2-week spring training, starting the season sometime in the middle of June, maybe combining some spring training games in June and then starting the game. June is typically when the Major League Baseball has its draft. It usually happens during the College World Series. And right now they've agreed to just do a 5-round draft in August rather than June, maybe have 100 games, have November playoffs. And then there's talk that if they have playoffs in November, it would be all neutral site type stuff. So the World Series, because of the seasonality of that time of year, would actually be played on a neutral site or centralized somewhere in the South or out West. What do you think of that?
I kind of like it.
Well, that's what they'll have to do. There's 2 reasons. Obviously, the virus coming back potentially in the fall, if you can imagine this. And then maybe after it hopefully peters out in summer, if that happens, if it's a sentinel virus and warm weather tends to affect it. But then you have, of course, weather, right? I mean, how are you going to play the World Series if the weather in New York or the weather in in Minnesota is terrible? So, if that's the case, so they would have to plan on that potentially being centralized somewhere, maybe out, and you don't want to do it indoor. So you'd want to do it like maybe, I guess you could do it in a retractable roof situation, like down in Arizona where they have one of those there. Of course, anywhere in California, in Southern California, San Diego, LA, maybe down in Florida, in Miami. So because that facility, but it's a small facility down there. They don't have many seats in that building, but there's the retractable roof scenario. So anyway, that was being discussed with Major League Baseball, having a somewhat of a neutral site type of World Series. And you know what else? All of this is done for baseball, and I think fans, QB, is remember before the Astros were going to be and being set up as maybe one of the most reviled teams for fans. And now with this virus having taken the attention away from their scandal, this may work out better for Houston, especially guys like Alex Bregman and Jose Altuve, who may not get booed as badly because after this, I mean, who's going to be in the mood to scream at baseball players? I'm just going to be happy that they're back on the field. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. We got some Facebook Live comments here. Diane says, they're brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred personal injury attorneys. Diane says, you guys help keep things normal. Rick says, rest in peace, Curly Neal from the Globetrotters. He passed away yesterday.
Curly Neal. Loved him. Loved Meadowlark. Yeah.
And then Eugene says, does JC know the name of the bar in Star Wars?
Mos Eisley's Cantina. Come on. I mean, anybody tries to get on me with Star Wars is going to be disappointed. I've got it all. I mean, Chris Doering and I could basically have a Star Wars segment, QB, if you want.
Well, here's what we can do is we may I may introduce him and let you 2 guys talk about Star Wars.
Well, did you think I would get that question wrong about the cantina?
I didn't even know there was a bar in Star Wars. I thought it was like a trick question.
You don't remember the famous scene with all the aliens when Han Solo and Luke Skywalker?
Like I told you, JC, I watched about 15 minutes of the first one, and that was back in the 70s. That was enough for me.
You are the only person on Earth at our age who has watched that little amount of Star Wars. You're the only one.
Yeah. Well, I'm the only person in the world that's never watched that one show that everybody makes a big deal about on what is it? You love
Game of Thrones?
Yes. I watched 10 minutes of that and I thought it was the dumbest thing ever.
You also missed the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is
yeah, I'd rather, like I said, if you need me to come dig a ditch or do your yard or paint your house, I'd much rather do that than watch any of those shows.
I got news for you. I'm the only person in history who's maybe seen 3 episodes of Cheers and didn't watch anything. I mean, I didn't watch one Seinfeld episode, not one.
Okay, well, I didn't really either. I mean, I've watched them here and there, but let's get to our play of the day. You want to talk about the play of the day, JC?
I mean, I bet you Taylor's just blown away by this. Anyway, yes, what is that today, QB?
Well, it's really, again, we don't have plays of the day. We have what happened This Day in Sports, and it's brought to you by your area rug masters. Receive a BOGO rug cleaning when you mention the code Shane or JC. Call them at 352-448-5999. That's area rug masters. I have two. In 1994, the Players Championship over at Sawgrass, the great white shark, Greg Norman, sets a scoring record of 24 under par to finish 4 strokes ahead of the runner-up, Fuzzy Zeller.
Yeah. Wow.
That happened in 94. And then here, I didn't realize this day in sports in 1998, the Chicago Bulls and the Atlanta Hawks played a game in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta that drew over 62,000 people. It's the largest in any game in NBA history.
Wow, that is amazing that many people went to watch an NBA game. The Georgia Dome, one of the most famous arenas for football.
It's no longer there.
I know, but the games that were played in that building, I think, eclipse all others in terms of historical significance and perspective. When you think about Alabama, Florida, you think about the Super Bowl that was played there between the Rams and the Titans. I mean, that building there was iconic, and of course they've got a much better one now, but that's my all-time favorite.
Well, that building, it doesn't seem like that building was there more than 15 years. I know it was, but it seemed like
you're right.
They built it and then they tore it down a few years later.
But just if you can recall the games that were played in that building. So anyway, I always thought, if I look back at my sports viewing history on live events, the Georgia Dome is at the top of the list.
Absolutely, it is. Well, JC, we're going to take a time out here. Our first time out of the program. We're going to be hopefully joined when we come back by Gator Hall of Famer, SEC Network guy, Chris Doering.
Chris Doering. And I was just going to mention what Diane said on the Facebook Live, brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred personal injury attorneys. She's right. I mean, we are doing the best we can to try to keep some sort of normalcy. Is that a word? Some sort of normal routine in sports fans' lives and all of our viewers, and certainly let's remember our great advertisers.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Gators Dockside, wings, ribs, seafood, and beer. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Radware Promotional Materials, Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker M.M. Parish, Gator BTW, Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Miapa Latin Cafe, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Okita America Martial Arts and After School, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Wrap Spot, Coldstone Creamery, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, and Style Cuts.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back. Caught up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. John Cornell, Shane Matthews on a Friday edition. We're going to go straight to the Titan MRI hotline now, and we are joined by Gator Hall of Famer and the SEC Network analyst, Chris Doering. Chris, welcome to the program. How are you, my man?
I'm good, boys. It's good to be on, man. I'm glad to hear you guys are back on the air, dude. It's an honor to be with you.
Oh, yep. That's great.
Well, Chris, let's talk a little bit about your career. A Gainesville boy going to PK Young, grew up loving the Gators, and we all know the story. Chris Collinsworth was kind of your hero growing up. You had to be a walk-on at Florida. Were there any other potential schools that you thought about going to at all?
Yeah, it was interesting because, I had and John Cornell would know this. I grew up watching him on TV 20, man. He was the guy doing the local sports and such. Yeah. So, at any rate, I had a career at PK Young. I tell everybody I had the greatest senior high school season of anybody in the history of high school senior years. I was all-state in football, all-state in basketball, all-state in baseball. Yeah. We won the state championship in basketball. I was MVP of the state basketball tournament, and I was Sky Masterson in the musical theater production of Guys and Dolls. So I got to do everything that senior year, but it didn't lead to any real scholarship offers. And I was setting some records at PK. Got some interest from some couple different schools, but nobody was really willing to give me a scholarship offer. Florida offered me a preferred walk-on spot, and Florida State kind of did the same. And I think I was a little put off by the idea that Florida didn't give me a scholarship. I thought in my mind it was a inevitable fact that I was going to get that scholarship, and that didn't occur. And so I had some thoughts of going to Florida State. I felt like they were giving me a little bit more attention. And then one night I was at a Florida State baseball game with my dad at Perry Field, and Florida State fans were hitting the tomahawk chop and doing all their obnoxiousness. And I just at that moment knew I couldn't be a part of that. Growing up a Gator, this was where my heart was. And so fortunately, as a story looking back now, fortunately I didn't get a scholarship offer to some smaller school, because I probably would have taken it and would not have gone the route of being a walk-on. But that's obviously served me well in terms of getting a chance to do what I loved at a school that I loved. Going to the NFL and doing everything after that. But more than anything, I think it was the course that I had to take, that path, having to prove people wrong, having to walk on and overcome the adversity and constantly proving that I was worthy. Same kind of thing happened in the NFL. And then after the NFL and my broadcasting career and other avenues, I've always had that chip on my shoulder mentality that kind of grew from being a walk-on originally, and it served me really well.
Chris, real quick before JC goes, speaking of walk-on, don't you think nowadays, because back when we played, there were so many guys on a roster you could have. I don't think there was a limit. There were tons of walk-ons. Yeah. Nowadays, there's only an X amount of walk-ons. You can only have so many guys on the roster. Don't you think the days of like your story, Kerwin's story, I think Lewis Oliver was a walk-on. Yeah. They're just walk-ons aren't given the opportunity nowadays that they may have been back, in the 90s. Would you agree with that or no?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think even at that time, even though the numbers of walk-ons may have been higher at that point, there was still a little bit of hesitancy from most coaches to give a walk-on an opportunity, because basically what they're saying is, hey, we missed on this guy. We didn't recruit him. We gave somebody else a scholarship, and now we're playing this walk-on above one of the guys we evaluated as being better. So I think there's always the coaches also have a little bit of egg in their face when they go that route. But for Coach Spurrier, this Shane better than anybody, all he wanted were guys that played the way they were coached, did the things they were asked to do, and competed. And I think that I was fortunate in that I played for a guy in Coach Spurrier that really didn't care whether or not he was playing a walk-on guy above a scholarship guy or not.
Well, certainly, Chris, you're one of my top 3, maybe top 4 all-time favorite former Gators, just from a perspective and also from a former player's perspective. And everybody can remember that wonderful night in Lexington, Kentucky, where I think your name really became more in the mainstream of Gator football, for Gator football fans. Yeah. When you made the catch, and, of course, Mick Hubert with the famous call that Doran's got a touchdown. And then from there, your career really did take off under Spurrier's system. But my question to you would be, when did you find, or what was it like when you found out that, since you were talking about being a walk-on, that they were going to go ahead and pay for it, that they were going to say, all right, here's Chris Doering. He has done what he's been asked to do. and now he's going to get a scholarship. Just kind of tell the folks a little bit about what that experience is like for you.
Well, first of all, Johnny, thank you for the kind words, man. I appreciate that. It's funny how quickly things changed for me, because the fall of 1993 was when all of this kind of transpired. I was heading into my redshirt sophomore season. Remember being back when we had two-a-days, when things were a little tougher on these guys than it is today. We finished our morning practice. We were gathered as a team before we left the practice field, and Coach Spurrier made the announcement that he was putting me on scholarship. And I just remember the reaction from my teammates. I think that's the thing that was most special to me, was they knew the work that I had put in. They knew that I was deserving of that, and their happiness for me was really the validation that I had been looking for. I think being a walk-on was always kind of a scarlet letter, at least for me. I felt like I was not the equal of everybody else, and so I remember in the newspapers they'd always write "Walk-on Chris Doering," "Walk-on Chris Doering," that, and so I almost thought that was my first name. So when I got that scholarship, it felt like a little bit of a validation, although even a couple weeks after that, they were still writing former walk-on Chris Doering, so I could never really shed that label. But I think that was right in a couple weeks before the season started, the '93 year. We go into the first game. We're playing an out-of-conference team, a smaller school. I think I caught 4 passes in that game. We go to Lexington on September 11th, 1993, and Coach Spurrier tells me right before the game that I'm going to start. So here I am. I go from being a walk-on a couple weeks earlier to now starting in the SEC for the school I grew up loving, which was unbelievable. And little did I know I'd have an opportunity in that game to really change the course of my life. In the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, I caught my first career touchdown reception. And for me, in my mind, that was the pinnacle of everything I had dreamt about, catching a touchdown in the SEC for my beloved Gators. And then I come back with 3 seconds left in that game to catch the one that everybody kind of remembers me for. And the ironic part is I caught 31 touchdowns. That was the second of my in my career. Went on to catch 29 more, but very few people probably remember many as much as they remember that one in Lexington, as you mentioned, Johnny.
Well, Chris, I think that we all remember where we were when that play was happening. I mean, it's one of those moments in Gator football history where you kind of remember where you were. I was at the Stardust Hotel, Las Vegas, Nevada, and I had just hit the money line ticket that I almost threw away 3 times earlier when you caught that pass, and I just jumped around like an idiot. And who could forget where they were when that happened? And I'm not really sure if anybody who's been a former Florida Gator has done more with what he's accomplished on the football field than Chris. I mean, he's got a fantastic business here in town with the mortgage company, Chris Doering Mortgage. He's on the SEC network. Everybody knows him on a first name basis. And so I think Chris Doering, you are just one of the guys that just really has accomplished so much. And it almost feels like you're still 25 years old.
Well, I think, first of all, I definitely stretched my 15 minutes of fame, probably more so than I've deserved. But it's interesting that you mentioned where you were, because I love more than anything getting a chance to be out with the Gator fans and speaking at different Gator clubs. And inevitably, there's going to be at least a couple people who come up to me and tell me, hey, man, I knew exactly where I was the night you caught that pass. I mean, think about it in life. There's a handful of moments that we can remember exactly where we were and what we were doing when something transpired. And most of the time it's something negative, whether we think about, hey, it was when the space shuttle blew up or when 9/11 occurred. All of these things are moments that we mark in time in our lives. And to have Gator fans, obviously older Gator fans at this point in time, but Gator fans remember that, and to have that be a joyful moment in their life is really something that's special to me and I cherish very much.
Absolutely. Chris, we got a question here or comment on Facebook Live brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred personal injury attorneys. Comes from Michael. It says, Chris, tell us about the Florida-Georgia game in Athens where late in the game the Gators scored 3 touchdowns on 3 consecutive passes, 2 of which were called back before the third one counted.
Well, it actually wasn't late in the game. It probably felt late in the game to Georgia fans because we blew them out. The game was over by halftime. But that was in the I caught 5 touchdowns in the first half. 2 of them got called back. 3 of them were on the same drive, and caught a touchdown, I believe, in the second quarter. Got called back for holding. We ran a couple plays later. I got pushed out of the back of the end zone and came back in and caught it. So I was ineligible there. They called that one back. And then finally we called a little Steamers Y7 for the touchdown. And that one counted. And I just remember the relief of finally catching that one after having it called back so many times. Riedel Anthony got mad at me, came over to celebrate, and I think I threw the ball at him. But that was a great day for us. I mean, you know this, Shane. The very few Gators have had an opportunity to play between the hedges, and that's a legendary place in college football history. So getting a chance to go there and beat them the way we did. We came out of the locker room in the second half. There was very little very little red and black in the stands. Orange and blue was all that was left. And I just remember Coach Spurrier running a little trickery late in the game to get Travis McGriff a touchdown there that put us over the 50-point mark. And he would remark later on that nobody had ever put 50 on Georgia between the hedges. So it was fun being a part of that. And I took a little piece of the hedges home with me that I still have to this day.
We're speaking with Chris Doering on the Titan MRI hotline. Chris, speaking of Travis, we had him on yesterday on the program, and you covering college football, been around college football for a long time. We were talking about, I believe it was the 95 team. It was, the wide receiving core, Doering, McGriff, Kwesi Green, Riedel, Ike. Have you, in all your years of covering college football, would you stack up that receiving core against any other teams?
I would. I actually got asked recently by Buddy Martin was talking about this class, this year's group of wide receivers maybe having an opportunity, or last year's group being so deep. Like, none of those groups, there hadn't been a group, in my opinion, that was as good and as deep as what ours was there in the middle of the 90s. Even before that, I mean, think about when I got there on your teams, it was, Alonzo Sullivan, Trey Everett, Harrison Houston, Willie Jackson, Aubrey Hill, Jack Jackson ended up coming in there. I mean, there's so many great players during that period of the 90s at the receiver spot. And I know a lot of people maybe diminish what folks did at the college level because they didn't have great professional careers. But I can say this, Shane, and you probably agree, in the NFL, I don't know that I was ever on a team in the league that had as good a five as the five that you just rattled off there. More times than not, at the NFL level, if you're not a starter, they're bringing guys in that can play special teams and contribute in that way. But in terms of pure wide receivers, I don't know if there was a better group in college football from top to bottom than what we had there in 1995. And certainly a whole lot of that to not only Coach Spurrier, but Dwayne Dixon. I thought Coach Dixon was a guy that was young enough, that was recent out of his career, that was able to be out there running the routes with us, showing us how to do the get off the line with our releases. I don't know that he was given as much credit as probably he deserved for helping to not only develop us, but create a competitiveness within that group that I think made us all better.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Chris, you've leveraged all of that career into quite a post-football career now. I mentioned the local business you have in town, and now you're on the SEC network and really getting to see and learn from some of the best in the business. I really enjoy watching you and Gene Chizik. I think Gene Chizik is one of the best defensive coaches I've ever seen, and I certainly love listening to you guys talk football in SEC now, and of course with Dari Noka. Talk a little bit about what your experience has been like as you've learned how to become a really good announcer at football, discussing football, and who you've really gotten close to within the business and what that's doing for you.
Well, first of all, I appreciate, again, the compliment there, Johnny. It's a pleasure to get to do what we do on Fridays and Saturdays. Yeah. It doesn't even feel like work going in and hanging out with guys that I genuinely love and would be hanging out with anyway. Talking football, doing something I'd be doing on the couch. So it's been great, man. Again, it was another one of those things. I had been working for ESPN on a syndicated package for a couple years before the SEC network was launched, doing some of the SEC games that were being shown on CSS. So when the SEC network came out, I thought I was a shoe-in to be folded into that group, and it was kind of the same situation as it was at Florida and getting in the NFL. I was overlooked. They didn't give me an opportunity that first year, and so I always considered myself to be an in-game analyst. I loved being on site, the excitement of the games. But that first summer after the SEC network launched, they gave me an opportunity to audition in the studio, and
I bet you were nervous. I
was definitely nervous, but at the same time I walked in, and Maria Taylor was the one that was doing the audition with me, and I had worked with Maria a couple seasons earlier on that syndicated package, so we had a relationship. And my audition went really well. I knew as soon as I got down, I felt like I had gotten it. Found out a couple weeks later that was the deal, and so getting the chance to come into the studio and work with Dory and Booger McFarland at the time was awesome. And you really get a chance. It's different because you get a chance to talk about all the games. You have a little bit different format when you're calling games. And Shane, this. You got to be prepared for everything that could happen and know every player on the roster. You probably use about 10% of that preparation. So it's a little different when you're working in the studio because on Fridays we know exactly kind of what we're talking about. We actually suggest the topics in the rundown, so you come in prepared for that. And then as you're watching games, it gets a little challenging on Saturdays, particularly when there's non-conference games going on where we have 7 or 8 TVs going at once. But being able to kind of have some thoughts that you can talk about everything is fun. And to do it, again, right now with Dari and Chiz, those guys are unbelievable. They're as authentic as they appear to be on the air. And our entire crew in Charlotte is it's a great team. It reminds me a lot of playing. It's the next best thing to playing because I think we all put in all the prep. You put in the work. You get out there. You're on air live. You get that adrenaline rush that comes from performing in that way. Yeah. And then afterwards, we all head up to this place down the road, have a couple beers, and celebrate together. Yeah. So it's a great group and a lot of camaraderie that I enjoy quite a bit.
Who got you involved? Who got you involved? I mean, how did you get involved in the broadcasting world? Was there a person that really helped you, or did you just
Well, before he answers that, he had that wonderful TV show at TV 20. What was that show called, Chris?
That wasn't even TV 20. That was Cox Cable. That was in the house. Cable. Back in the
house. Oh wow.
Right. Hey, here's the thing, man. You know what? I not reps that I'm proud of, but reps that help me. I think get better. And it's just like playing football. The more you do it, the more opportunity you have to improve and see the things that are maybe not working. So for me, I think the hardest thing, and you guys would know this, sometimes we try to be somebody on air that we think we're supposed to be, like we're supposed to emulate somebody else. And for me, I think the thing that's been maybe the most difficult but also most enlightening is trying to be yourself and trying to just be authentic in that way. I could probably be myself with the exception of some of the words that I use. My mouth, as you guys know, off the air is not the greatest, but I've cleaned that up and made sure not to get myself in trouble on air. But in terms of who kind of inspired me in that way, I got my degree from the University of Florida in the College of Journalism as a telecom major. I always had an interest in that. And I think again, I go back to this idea that there's very few things in life that can provide you with that same spark and same adrenaline rush that comes along with playing football. And to me, I'd love the idea of coaching, but there's a lot of time away from your family and a lot of uncertainty, much like playing in the NFL. In my 10 years in the NFL, I got cut 10 different times. I moved 22 different times all over the country. It's a tough life. So this was the next best thing for me to stay involved and also to have that adrenaline rush that you get from performing on live television.
Chris, you hold the SEC record for touchdown catches
for a couple more months, Shane. For a couple more months.
That's what I was going to bring up. I know who is tracking you.
Yeah.
So who was it Jamar Chase?
Jamar Chase and also the Devontae Smith, right? Or the Alabama. Which one was it that came back this year, JC?
It was. It's
Devontae Smith. Yeah, Ruggs was close 6. Too, but Smith and Jamar Chase are both in striking distance at this point.
How many do they need? I know you know.
Shoot. I don't know. Jamar Chase, I think, may need 7 or so. I think what do you have 20 this year? I believe. I mean,
it's crazy.
I caught 17 my senior season. Riddell caught 18 his final year. I think Jamar Chase had 20. Now here's the thing. They played 15 games and all of their stats counted. And I know Shane, you'll agree with me on this. I don't know why their bowl games and postseason games count, but ours don't. They could go back and add all the stats from our bowl games and include those in our statistics.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why they don't go back and add that stuff in for the guys that's not being counted for. It's crazy. Chris, who threw you your first career NFL touchdown pass?
First career NFL touchdown pass. I think was it you?
Well, I wasn't sure. I just was going to ask the question.
I caught one from you on a Sunday night game against the Indianapolis Colts. That was let's see, I only caught 3 of them, so there's not a lot that I can. Yeah, it must have been you. I mean, I caught 3 in the first half of that Georgia game, and I caught 3 in my entire NFL career. So it's a little different disparity of stats. But yeah, it was a fun night, man. Sunday night football, and I think I probably should have caught another one that night. I remember. We were down around the goal line, and you threw it a little bit behind me, but I got a hand on it. And our former teammate, my former teammate, Mike Peterson's like, "Come on, Doe, you got to catch that." He's playing for the Colts, and he's encouraging me that I should have caught that pass. It was funny, man.
Well, I will swear to this day that when you were in Denver, you were about to be in one of the top 2 rotations for that offense until you hurt your ankle in Phoenix, I think is what happened.
Yeah, that was frustrating, Johnny, because I felt that, and Shane, there's always an intersection in I think our professional careers where you're at your peak of maturity and your knowledge and physically. And that's my second year in Denver. I've been working out with Ed McCaffrey and kind of learning from him, he was a great influence on my development at the receiver position, and felt like here I am, my first year in Denver. They were coming off of back-to-back Super Bowl championships. John Elway retires, and we're playing on Monday Night Football against the Dolphins, my childhood team. Dan Marino's on the other sideline playing for the Fins, and I'm the 3rd receiver in the rotation to start the season. It's Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey, and me. And I caught 4 passes that night, 2 fourth-down conversions. Think things are rolling that year, and Rod actually got hurt. And then you may remember Mike Heimerdinger from his days here in Gainesville, but Dinger was my receiver coach, and he made a comment at halftime, I'm out there starting now. He goes, "Man, this hadn't been since the 70s. We had 2 white wide receivers starting on Monday Night Football." Yep. So it was fun to do that. By that year, we ended up going 6-10, had a really great offseason heading into the 2000 year, and kind of was in that rotation to be the 3rd guy again. Mm-hmm. And tore my Achilles tendon in our first preseason game out in Arizona, and that derailed that season. So, yeah, I appreciate you acknowledging that. I do feel like that was the year that it was going to be the breakout season in the NFL, and it just didn't kind of materialize, unfortunately.
It was. I remember visiting with you out there in Colorado, you and Tiffany, and I thought that you were on your way. But, as life turns out, things happen for a reason, and certainly look at where you are now. And Chris, that career, I can't get over how much you've made out of your life today based on, some limited things that happened in your NFL career, but also, of course, with your Florida career and how well it went for you and where you came from, PK Young and so forth. So Chris, I gotta say something before we keep going here. Shane might be the only guy who's not watched Star Wars, and we were having a discussion how you and I could go on about Star Wars for probably an hour and a half. Yeah. So, last night we're sitting around the house trying to figure out what I asked him, I said, what'd you watch on TV last night? He didn't have a TV on at all. So he asked me what I watched, and I watched Attack of the Clones.
So, I love it, bro. I'm a huge Star Wars guy. I mean, growing up in the 70s there when Star Wars debuted, watched it like multiple 100 times probably as a kid, and I think the fun thing for me is that I've been able to share that with my son. My son has gotten into the newer Star Wars as those have been debuted and kind of followed all of the stories along the way. So enjoyed it very much, and sad kind of that whole line of movies is done, man.
Well, I know what you think the QB likes Star Wars, Chris. I mean,
that's certainly you know that. I mean, Shane he didn't watch anything other than sports, and I'm worried for him right now with no sports on television that he's not going to have anything to do.
Yeah, it's been brutal. I've been cleaning my house. Hey, Doering, few last things here. Let's get off the Star Wars.
Oh, come on now.
You got to be Mr. Two Bits. Talk a little bit about what that meant to you.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, as a kid, and Johnny, you know this, growing up in Gainesville, being in that stadium as a kid and watching Mr. Two Bits and seeing him get pockets of the crowd going was awesome. And then you'd be under the stadium going to get a Coke or something, and you'd see him run by, and it was like Superman had just walked by in the tunnel. And so obviously a big part of all of our so many fans for so many years, part of the game day experience, and got a chance to to meet him and know him a little bit in my post-playing days, which was an honor. But after he passed away, I think Florida did a great job of coming up with a way to honor him with former players and other alumni coming back and doing that. So I wanted to do it authentically. Man, I spent a full day and a half probably trying to go out and get the outfit to look like him. Had to go to, I think I went to like Belk Lindsay or something to get some blue pants and the orange shirt and wore my golf shoe spikes. So it was fun trying to put that together. But watching the tape, I treated it a lot like preparing for a game, where I was watching the tape, making sure I had all the mannerisms and movements as accurately as I possibly could. And I'm still go down in history as the only Mr. Two Bits to lose a homecoming game to Vanderbilt. So that probably won't be asked.
Oh, wow.
But it was fun. It was a noon game, pretty empty at noon against Vanderbilt, but my heart was still beating about as fast as it's ever beat before any other game I played in.
Did you change your hair to white? I mean, did you do any hair?
I didn't go that far. No, that's a lot. But I did it for some reason. I decided to chest bump Albert, which I don't know. I'm glad Albert didn't fall over, but it was that was not an authentic move. I don't think I remembered Mr. Two-Bit chest bumping Albert.
Chris, let's talk a little bit before we let you go about what Dan Mullen's done in his 2 years here. Kyle Trask's story from last year is truly amazing. I think it kind of got overshadowed by what Joe Burrow did at LSU. But just talk briefly about your thoughts on what Dan Mullen has done bringing the program back.
Yeah, man, it happened a lot quicker than I expected it to. And I think we all had a little trepidation about whether or not he was the right guy. But I think as soon as he stepped off that plane, gator chomping, and stood up in front of the microphone at the introductory press conference, I think we all recognized that he was the right guy. The way that he came in, he understood the culture of Florida football after having been here as an offensive coordinator and winning a national championship with Urban Meyer. The way that he tipped the cap to the previous teams and what we had all built there before, and the fact that he embraced all of us as former players, I think was something that I appreciated a lot. And then I was scared. He's coming off a 4-7 season in Jim McElwain's final year there. Florida was struggling, and I'm seeing Florida go backwards. I'm seeing Georgia under Kirby Smart stack top recruiting class on top recruiting class. And I'm thinking this is going to be a long time trying to reel the Bulldogs back in. But Dan Mullen did it extremely quickly. I think he's done more with less, and that's not a dig at the Florida roster that he inherited. I think it's a fact. I mean, his scheming and game plan. You go back and look at the way they were able to overcome deficiencies against Mississippi State when they went to Starkville. I mean, that was a defensive line that should have dominated Florida's offensive line. They found ways to offset that with some quick passing and running a little speed option, different things that he throws into his game plans. I think that they give his guys an opportunity. It reminds me a lot of Coach Spurrier, because I thought Coach Spurrier did a great job of putting guys in positions to be successful. And it seems like it's the same situation with Florida. And I think that the biggest thing that I take away in the last couple seasons is the way he's gotten those guys to believe in themselves, believe in the fact that they're deserving of being able to compete for an SEC championship. They're deserving to go toe-to-toe with Georgia. I mean, Georgia was blowing us out in the last couple seasons under Jim McElwain, and to see Florida go into Jacksonville and go toe-to-toe with them in the fourth quarter, I think that has served them well heading into this year, where I look at it as, hey, Florida might be in the best position in the entire conference. Losing spring practice is not ideal for anybody, but when you got as many returning players as Florida does, with a quarterback that's as experienced now that Kyle Trask is, and you look at Georgia, not only they get a new quarterback from another conference in Jamie Newman, they got a new offensive coordinator with Todd Monken. They lose Sam Pittman on the offensive line, so now you're trying to acclimate a new coach on the offensive line. Scott Cochran's never coached a position on the field before, and now he's the special teams coordinator. I mean, all of these things to me lead me to believe that Florida has a chance to even more so narrow that gap that's not that wide right now. This is the year that Florida needs to overcome Georgia and get themselves back to Atlanta.
Well, Chris, speaking of this is the year, with what we're dealing with today and all of those who in the college football world, would you assess the percentage of us not having a college football season start on time as being currently today, and what do you think could happen or what will happen as we go forward? And I know
it seems like, especially the last couple of days, I don't like the discussion. Like, why are we trying to talk about the season being delayed at this point in time? Why are we talking about, the Big 12 commissioner was talking about potentially playing in front of no fans? Like, it's March right now, and we're talking about something that starts in September. There's a lot more. I mean, we're going to find out from the NBA. Are they going to end up playing in front of empty stadiums? I mean, those baseball. There's a lot of other sports. Fortunately for our calendar as football guys, it happened at the right time. While we missed some spring practice, which is unfortunate, it doesn't affect our season. I honestly believe that things will get better, and maybe that's just me being an optimist. But I think things will get better, and I think we will end up having a college football season. I'm anxious, guys, to see how some of these rules maybe are adapted a little bit. Do they allow coaches to have a little bit more communication? I'd love to see some Zoom meetings between coaches and their position players so they can do some of the install stuff, so they can stay in a little bit better touch and not feel like these guys are so out of it. Because, I mean, let's be honest, not only are these guys missing practice time, they're missing valuable time. The strength and conditioning programs during the winter and spring after spring practice is incredibly important, not to mention nutrition. I mean, how many of these guys do you think are getting the kind of nutrition at home that they would typically be getting with the training table and what's offered from the universities that they play for? So I think there's a lot of things that are having some far-reaching impacts that we won't even know about until we see them on the field this year.
So what would you say? So give me a percentage. What would you say the percentage of us, I mean, the chances, what, 1 in 10?
No, I mean, I don't think, I don't know why I'm qualified to comment on this, but I think it's going to be, a 75% chance, 80% chance that we're playing as normal. That's, I just have a hard time believing by the time we get to August and September that we're still going to be dealing with this. I hope we're not, but I think at the same time, what are they going to do? I'm interested to see with these 15 practices that they're losing right now. Is that something we can add on like an NFL style mini camp or a starting camp early where these guys are out on the field working through some installation and teaching and 7-on-7 stuff? Maybe you don't have the contact, but you're able to add those practices so that guys can develop. I think the biggest hit that we'll see are these early enrollees, guys that graduated early, that came into college trying to be ready to play as freshmen, and that's been the trend here of late, is more and more true freshmen contributing. So I think that those are the guys that I feel for the most in losing a lot of what they're losing during this time of year.
Well, Chris, we appreciate you taking time to join us today, man. We enjoy watching you on SEC Network. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you on down the road, buddy.
Yeah, it's fun being with you guys, man. We could have talked probably for hours here, but I appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you so much, Chris.
A great Hall of Famer Chris Doering from the SEC Network joined the program on the Titan MR hotline, and good stuff right there.
Well, I was just trying to basically get a feel for what he's heard in the football, world of those who are in the business, off the field, on the field, whatnot, and what they're thinking right now. Because I agree that we're still ways off before anything major has to be decided. But already, we've seen the U.S. Open's now going to get postponed. That's in June. The Indianapolis 500 is in May. That's going to go back to August. And the biggest key here would be, how can these players be prepared to start a season if they're not going to be allowed on campus to do their necessary preparation? So this is, I know as each day passes, I just think about the fall. I just do.
Yeah, it's who knows what's going to happen. Let me read this real quick. JC, at Center State Bank, we put business first. We're the largest community bank in the state of Florida. And understand that all small businesses need a community business partner that they can rely on. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. To learn more, visit centerstatebank.com. Center State Bank, member FDIC. Well, JC, that was good stuff. Like you said, we could have talked for hours.
Well, Chris is great. I mean, he really has so much to offer. And so I look forward to who we're lining up for next week as we try to keep this thing rolling along. And here we are, finally coming to the end of just a dreadful month of March. Just absolutely amazing when you look back at what all's happened. Of course, the human tragedy of this virus obviously takes priority over everything. But in the sports world, we saw March Madness get canceled. We saw spring training get canceled. Spring football practice has been canceled. The spring sports in general, all of which have been stopped. Drastic measures now to try to protect people. And I just think that it's just been amazing. We're going to look back at this time, and there's nothing else that could compare to something like this that I've lived through anyway.
That is so true. So have a good weekend, JC.
You too. All right, you too, my man.
Today's show is a wrap, brought to you by WrapSpot. A vehicle wrap from WrapSpot will give your business years of brand recognition and increased sales. Call WrapSpot today. We'll see you right back bright and early on Monday morning. Have a good weekend.
All right, bye-bye.